Part 1. The toast that almost killed me. They say retirement parties are supposed to be joyful. A celebration of a life's work. Smiles. Applause. Champagne. That night, as I stood in the center of the room holding a crystal glass, everyone around me was clapping. Everyone, except my son. I noticed it just for a second, the way his eyes followed my glass instead of my face. At the time, I told myself I was imagining things. I had just retired after 42 years in the industry. Built everything from nothing. A modest fortune, yes, but more importantly, a reputation for integrity. People respected me. Or so I thought. "Dad," my son said, raising his own glass late, forcing a smile. "Congratulations. You deserve this." His voice sounded tight. Practiced. I nodded, lifted my glass slightly, and paused, because something felt wrong. The champagne didn't smell right. Just faintly, barely noticeable, but enough to make my stomach tighten. I looked down at the golden liquid, then back at my son. He was watching, waiting. That was the moment I understood something terrifying. This party wasn't for me. It was for what came after me. I didn't drink. Instead, I smiled. The same calm smile I'd learned to wear in boardrooms and negotiations for decades. And in that instant, I made a decision that would change everything. Before we go any further, if you enjoy powerful stories of betrayal, hidden truths, and justice served quietly, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what happens next, because this story only gets darker. I set the glass down slowly. No one noticed, except my son. His smile cracked, just a little, and that's when I knew. This wasn't paranoia. This was premeditated. Next in Part 2, why my son was desperate for me to be gone, and the secret documents he thought I'd never see. Part 2, the reason he wanted me gone. I didn't say anything that night. That was my first mistake, or maybe my smartest move. After the party ended, guests drifted away laughing, congratulating me, thanking me for the champagne they'd enjoyed. The irony almost made me dizzy. Everyone drank, just not me. My son stayed behind longer than usual, helping clear glasses, avoiding eye contact. I watched him from the hallway, the way he rinsed my glass 3 times before putting it in the sink. Too careful. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed replaying moments from the past year, things I'd brushed off as stress, aging, misunderstandings, the sudden interest in my will, his insistence on managing my finances to help, the way he'd started talking about my retirement like it was a problem, his wife casually asking, "Have you thought about assisted living, just in case?" At the time, I thought they were being practical. Now I realized they were being strategic. The missing folder. The next morning, I went to my study. That room had always been my sanctuary. Shelves of books, framed awards, old family photos. In the bottom drawer of my desk, I kept a slim black folder, nothing flashy, but critical. It held updated copies of my will, trust documents, and a contingency letter meant to be opened only if something happened to me suddenly. The folder was gone. Not misplaced. Gone. The drawer was closed perfectly, just like always, but I knew that drawer better than anyone. Someone had been inside. My hands trembled for the first time in years. I checked my laptop next. Several files had been accessed at 2:13 a.m. I had been asleep. Someone had used my fingerprint scanner. Someone who knew exactly how to lift my hand while I slept. The call I wasn't supposed to hear. Around noon, my son called. "Dad," he said cheerfully. Too cheerfully. "Just checking in. Big night yesterday. You okay?" "I'm fine," I replied. "Just tired." A pause. Then I heard something he didn't know. I could hear muffled voices on the other end. His wife. Did he drink it? She whispered. My son didn't mute fast enough. "No," he hissed back. "I don't think so." My blood ran cold. "Then we need to move faster," she said. The line went silent. "Dad?" my son asked. "You there?" "Yes," I said calmly. "I'm here." The truth I uncovered. That afternoon, I drove to my attorney's office without telling anyone. He looked concerned the moment he saw my face. "You weren't supposed to come yet," he said carefully. That sentence confirmed everything. He pulled out a file, one I'd never authorized. Documents prepared to declare me medically incompetent. Signed by a private physician. Dated for next week. My son was listed as temporary guardian. His wife as financial overseer. They weren't just planning my death. They were planning my disappearance. Why the champagne mattered. The attorney hesitated before speaking again. "There's something else," he said quietly. "A policy your son took out 6 months ago. Life insurance. On me. A large one. With a clause that paid out only if death occurred within a private residence. Or at a private event. Like a retirement party." I leaned back in the chair, suddenly unable to breathe. They didn't need an accident. They needed a moment. That night, I went home and looked at my son sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling his phone like nothing was wrong. He smiled when he saw me. "Dinner?" he asked. I smiled back, because he still believed I didn't know, and that gave me time. Quick reminder. If you're following this story and want to see how quiet planning beats loud betrayal, don't forget to subscribe and stay with us. The next part reveals the move they never saw coming. Next in part 3, how I replaced the poison champagne, set a trap of my own, and let them believe their plan was still working. Part 3, I let them think I was weak. I didn't confront them. Not my son. Not his wife. Not yet. People make mistakes when they think they've already won. So I did exactly what they expected. I became fragile. I started forgetting things on purpose. I missed a doctor's appointment and apologized profusely. I asked my son to remind me about bills I'd paid for years without help. I let his wife correct me in front of others. "Dad's been a little off lately," she told friends, shaking her head with fake concern. I watched her play the role beautifully, and I played mine better. The second bottle. 3 days later, my son brought home another bottle of champagne. "Thought we'd celebrate again," he said lightly. "Just us this time." I smiled and nodded. That night, while they slept, I swapped the bottle. Not with poison. With proof. Inside the label, I placed a tiny chemical strip from my old lab days. Harmless, invisible, but reactive to exactly what had been added to the first bottle. If the substance touched it again, it would mark itself permanently. Then I resealed everything. Perfectly. The doctor who wasn't on my side. The next morning, the family doctor arrived, the one scheduled to evaluate my mental state. He was young, nervous. He didn't expect me to greet him sharply dressed, fully alert, with coffee already prepared. "I'd like this evaluation recorded," I said calmly. "Legally." His eyes flicked toward my daughter-in-law. She smiled tightly. "Dad, that's not necessary." "It is," I replied, "unless you're hiding something." The doctor hesitated. Then he asked the first question. I answered clearly. The second, still sharp. By the 10th question, he was sweating, because the narrative he'd been paid to support wasn't working. The mistake they made. After the evaluation, my son pulled me aside. "You didn't need to embarrass us," he said through clenched teeth. I leaned in. "You embarrassed yourselves the moment you assumed I was already gone." His face drained of color. That night, they panicked. I knew because they opened the champagne again. They didn't drink it. They tested it. And the strip reacted. Bright, permanent, unmistakable. The call I was waiting for. At 3:07 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Hale," a calm voice said, "this is Detective Morgan. We need to talk about a substance found in your home." I smiled into the darkness. "Of course," I said. "I've been waiting." Stay with the story. If you're enjoying watching a slow plan dismantle a fast betrayal, make sure you subscribe. The next part exposes who else was involved and how deep this went. Next in Part 4, ere the investigation begins, and my daughter-in-law realizes the house is no longer hers. Part 4, the house was no longer theirs. Detective Morgan didn't come alone. 2 unmarked cars parked outside the house just after sunrise. No sirens. No drama. Just quiet authority. My daughter-in-law froze when she saw them through the window. "What's this?" She whispered. I took my time sipping my coffee. "Consequences," I said. The search. They had a warrant. Not for me. For the house. Specifically, the kitchen, the wine cabinet, and the trash. The detective explained it calmly. Suspicion of tampering with consumable goods. Possible intent to cause bodily harm. My son started talking too fast. "There's been a misunderstanding." The detective raised a hand. "Sir, please remain silent." That silence hit harder than any accusation. The evidence they forgot. They searched the trash first. Inside a black bag, carefully tied, was the original champagne bottle. Empty. Washed. But not clean enough. The lab strip I planted had reacted. The residue glowed faintly under UV light. My daughter-in-law's knees gave out. She sat down hard on the couch. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I threw it away weeks ago." Detective Morgan looked at her. "You threw away evidence," he said. "That makes this worse." The doctor spoke. Then came the surprise they never planned for. The family doctor arrived. But this time, he wasn't there to help them. He looked like a man who hadn't slept. "I want to amend my statement," he said quickly. I was pressured to exaggerate concerns about Mr. Hale's mental health. My son stared at him. "You promised." "I promised nothing," the doctor snapped. "You paid me." That sentence ended everything. When the power shifted, Detective Morgan turned to my son. "Sir, please stand up." My son looked at me. For the first time in weeks, his eyes weren't angry. They were scared. "Dad," he said softly, "we can explain this." I stood. Slowly. "Sit down," I said. "You've done enough explaining." The house changed hands. Before leaving, the detective handed me a document. Temporary restraining order. They were no longer allowed to stay in the house. Effective immediately. My daughter-in-law screamed, "This is our home." "No," I corrected her. "It's my home. You were just renting space in it." Alone again, but not weak. By noon, the house was silent. Their things were gone. So were the lies. I walked through every room, touching the walls, breathing freely for the first time in months. But this wasn't the end. This was just the clearing of the stage, because the investigation wasn't over, and I hadn't shown them everything yet. Don't miss what comes next. If you think this was justice, wait until you see what happens when motives are exposed. Subscribe so you don't miss the moment everything collapses. Next in Part 5, why the poison wasn't meant for me, and who the real target was. Part 5, I wasn't the only target. When the house finally went quiet, I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. Detective Morgan returned 2 days later, alone this time. No badge on display. No recorder on the table. That's how I knew this wasn't routine anymore. "There's something we didn't tell you," he said. I gestured for him to sit. The report that changed everything. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were toxicology results. The poison found in the champagne wasn't lethal in small doses. Not immediately. It was meant to weaken, Morgan explained. Cause dizziness, confusion, heart irregularities. I frowned. That doesn't make sense. Why not finish the job? Morgan hesitated. Because the plan wasn't to kill you at the party. My stomach tightened. It was to make you look unstable, he continued. An incident during a public event. Collapse. Hospitalization. Then the rest would follow naturally. Emergency guardianship. Incompetence ruling. Total control. And once that happened, Morgan said quietly, you would have been moved to a private care facility. One with limited oversight. I leaned back slowly. They didn't want me dead. They wanted me erased. The real reason for the insurance. The life insurance policy wasn't a payout plan. It was leverage. If I died after being declared incompetent, control of the estate would transfer cleanly. No challenges. No questions. They were patient, careful, and cruel. The other file. Morgan pulled out another document. This, he said, is what concerns us most. It was a draft email from my daughter-in-law to a private care administrator. Subject line, long-term placement, urgent. In the body. Patient has moments of clarity but cannot be trusted. Family requests restricted contact. Sedatives approved if agitation occurs. My hands clenched. That place, Morgan added, has a history. People go in and are forgotten. The weight of it all. After Morgan left, I sat alone for hours. Not angry. Not afraid. Just hollow. I thought about every time I'd defended my son. Every excuse I'd made. Every moment I'd told myself family wouldn't do this. I was wrong. But what hurt most wasn't the betrayal. It was the realization that love, when unchecked, can teach people how far they are allowed to go. And I had taught him that. The call I finally made. That night, I called my son, not to confront him, to ask one question. Did you ever plan to stop? I asked. There was a long silence. Then he whispered, I didn't think it would go that far. I closed my eyes. That means you never thought it would stop at all. He didn't argue. Stay with me. This story isn't about revenge anymore. It's about accountability and what happens when denial finally ends. Subscribe to see how this ends, because the next part changes everything. Next in part 6, why I turned down charges that would have destroyed them, and the condition. I said instead. Part 6, the condition they never expected. Detective Morgan thought I was making a mistake. You understand, he said carefully, that if you press charges now, the case is strong. Attempted poisoning, fraud, coercion. You'd likely never see them again. I nodded. I understood all of it. That's exactly why I'm not doing it, I replied. He frowned. Sir, after what they tried to do to you. Because prison would end the story, I said, and I need the truth to finish it. Morgan leaned back, studying me. What are you asking for, then? I slid a single page across the table. A signed statement. A binding agreement. My condition. The offer. When my son and his wife arrived later that afternoon, they didn't look like conspirators anymore. They looked small, defeated. My daughter-in-law wouldn't meet my eyes. My son's hand shook as he sat down across from me. You're not pressing charges? He asked, disbelief cracking his voice. Not yet, I said calmly. Hope flashed across his face. I raised a finger. Don't confuse mercy with escape. I pushed the paper toward them. You want this to end without prison. I continued. Then this is how. They read in silence. My son's face drained of color. You want us to admit everything, he whispered. Publicly, I corrected. And the estate? His wife asked, finally looking up. You renounce all claims, I said. Now, and permanently. She swallowed hard. And if we refuse? Then the detective finishes his work, I replied. And the courts decide how long you'll have to think about it. Silence. Long, heavy. Finally, my son spoke. You'd really destroy us like this. I looked at him steadily. No, I said. You tried to destroy me. I'm just refusing to disappear. The confession. The statement was clear. They admitted to tampering with the champagne, to falsifying medical evaluations, to planning an incompetency ruling, to seeking restricted placement in a private facility. No excuses. No misunderstandings. Facts. The document would be filed, not with the police, but with my attorneys, my bank, my trustees, and a sealed copy with the court. Insurance against their lies. When they finished signing, my daughter-in-law broke down. We thought we were being careful, she sobbed. We thought we were being smart. You were being desperate, I said. And desperation makes people cruel. My son looked at me, eyes red. Why are you doing this? He asked. Why not just end us? Because I wanted him to live with the truth. Because shame can teach lessons prison never will. Because consequences don't have to be loud to be permanent. The door closing, properly. That evening, they left with nothing but their personal belongings. No access. No leverage. No future claims. As the door closed behind them, I felt something unexpected. Not victory. Relief. For the first time since that champagne glass hovered near my lips, I knew something for certain. They could no longer hurt me. But the story wasn't over yet, because the world still believed I'd retired quietly. And in the next part, I would decide whether to let that belief stand, or reveal the truth that would follow them forever. In part 7, I step back into public life, and my son realizes too late that silence was the last protection he had left. Part 7, the silence that exposed them. I didn't go public right away. That was the part no one expected. 4 weeks, I said nothing. No statements. No interviews. No dramatic accusations. To the outside world, I was simply a retired man who had stepped back from business and family alike. And that silence, it terrified them more than any headline ever could. Because when there's no noise, people start asking questions on their own. The first cracks. It started quietly. My former colleagues noticed. I'd stopped attending events where my son used to represent they. Family. Board dinners. Charity galas. Industry panels. Invitations arrived with my name on them, and when I declined, people began to wonder why he was still showing up. Then the rumors started. Not wild ones. Careful ones. I heard his father cut ties. Apparently, there was a legal situation. Something about guardianship papers that never went through. The truth didn't need to be announced. It was leaking. When he tried to reclaim the story, 3 weeks after signing the confession, my son made a mistake. He tried to rewrite history. He posted a long message online, polished, emotional, carefully vague. Family transitions are hard. Sometimes elders struggle to let go. We are doing our best to protect those we love. The post gained sympathy. For about 12 hours. Then someone replied. Not a stranger. One of my former executives. Protect them from what? The court filings you tried to submit? The comment disappeared quickly. But screenshots don't. Within a day, people started reaching out to me, not to gossip, but to verify. I didn't deny anything. I didn't confirm it either. I simply said, the truth exists. I'm not hiding from it. That was enough. The meeting he couldn't avoid. A month later, I received an invitation. A private meeting with the trustees of a foundation I helped build decades ago. My son was already there when I arrived. He stood when he saw me, eyes wide, not angry, not pleading. Afraid. The chairwoman spoke first. We've reviewed some documents, she said calmly, including a signed admission. My son swallowed. We need to ask, she continued, why you believed you were entitled to make decisions on behalf of someone clearly competent. He tried to explain. Words tumbled out. Stress, pressure, misunderstandings. None of it landed. Because facts don't care about tone. By the end of the meeting, he was removed from all advisory roles. No scandal. No announcement. Just quiet exclusion. The kind that lasts. The moment I finally spoke, that night, I wrote one letter. not online, not to the press, to the people who mattered, my colleagues, my partners, the institutions that knew my name. It was short. I am well. I am competent. I stepped back not because I was weak, but because I was tested. I chose clarity over conflict. Thank you for respecting that. I sent it. Then I turned off my phone. What silence really does. Silence doesn't erase truth. It sharpens it. By refusing to shout, I forced the world to listen. And by refusing to disappear, I made it impossible for them to pretend nothing happened. I slept better than I had in years, because I finally understood something simple and powerful. You don't need to destroy someone who tried to erase you. You just need to stand where the light can see you. In Part 8, the final confrontation comes, not in court, not in public, but in a private moment that decides whether my son loses everything, or finally becomes someone I can face again. He posted a long message online, polished, emotional, carefully vague. Family transitions are hard. Sometimes elders struggle to let go. We are doing our best to protect those we love. The post gained sympathy. For about 12 hours. Then someone replied. Not a stranger. One of my former executives. Protect them from what? The court filings you tried to submit? The comment disappeared quickly. But screenshots don't. Within a day, people started reaching out to me, not to gossip, but to verify. I didn't deny anything. I didn't confirm it either. I simply said, the truth exists. I'm not hiding from it. That was enough. The meeting he couldn't avoid. A month later, I received an invitation. A private meeting with the trustees of a foundation I helped build decades ago. My son was already there when I arrived. He stood when he saw me, eyes wide, not angry, not pleading. Afraid. The chairwoman spoke first. We've reviewed some documents, she said calmly, including a signed admission. My son swallowed. We need to ask, she continued, why you believed you were entitled to make decisions on behalf of someone clearly competent. He tried to explain. Words tumbled out. Stress, pressure, misunderstandings. None of it landed. Because facts don't care about tone. By the end of the meeting, he was removed from all advisory roles. No scandal. No announcement. Just quiet exclusion. The kind that lasts. The moment I finally spoke. That night, I wrote one letter. Not online. Not to the press. To the people who mattered. My colleagues. My partners. The institutions that knew my name. It was short. I am well. I am competent. I stepped back not because I was weak, but because I was tested. I chose clarity over conflict. Thank you for respecting that. I sent it. Then I turned off my phone. What silence really does. Silence doesn't erase truth. It sharpens it. By refusing to shout, I forced the world to listen. And by refusing to disappear, I made it impossible for them to pretend nothing happened. I slept better than I had in years, because I finally understood something simple and powerful. You don't need to destroy someone who tried to erase you. You just need to stand where the light can see you. In Part 8, the final confrontation comes, not in court, not in public, but in a private moment that decides whether my son loses everything, or finally becomes someone I can face again. Part 8. The conversation he couldn't escape. He didn't call. He didn't text. He showed up. No warning. No entourage. No confidence left to perform. I was in the garden when I saw him standing by the gate, hands in his coat pockets, shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. The man who once believed. He could manage me like an asset now. Looked like someone who'd finally run out of strategies. "I won't stay long," he said when I nodded for him to come in. "That's up to you," I replied, clipping a rose and setting the shears down carefully. We stood there for a moment, the late afternoon sun stretching our shadows across the grass. No witnesses, no lawyers, just truth with nowhere to hide. "I lost everything," he said quietly. "The board rolls. The investors. People don't return my calls anymore." I didn't react. He took a breath. "They all think I tried to steal from you." "You did," I said calmly. He flinched, not at the accusation, but at the certainty. "I told myself I was protecting the family," he continued. "That you were holding onto things you didn't need anymore." "And when did that turn into poisoning champagne?" I asked. He closed his eyes. "I didn't think you'd notice," he whispered. "I thought you were slowing down." That hurt more than the betrayal. Not because of the insult, but because it showed how completely he'd underestimated me. "I noticed," I said. "I just didn't panic." He looked up at me then, eyes wet. "Why didn't you end me when you had the chance?" I studied him for a long moment. "Because destruction doesn't teach," I said. "It just removes the lesson." He swallowed hard. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I just need to know if this is it. If I'm dead to you." The question hung between us. I thought of the boy he used to be, the man he became, the choices that bridged the two. "You're not dead to me," I said slowly, "but you're not entitled to me either." He nodded. "What does that mean?" "It means," I replied, "that if you want a relationship, it won't be built on power or fear. It'll be built on honesty, every day." "And if I fail?" he asked. "Then we stop," I said simply. He exhaled, like someone who'd been holding his breath for years. "I can live with that," he said. As he turned to leave, he paused. "For what it's worth," he said. "The silence was worse than prison would have been." I nodded. That was the point. When the gate closed behind him, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness, not closure, but possibility. In Part 9, a single unexpected event forces both of us to confront whether change is real or just temporary. Part 9, the moment that tested everything. Change is easy when no one is watching. That's what I'd learned over the years. Real change only proves itself when temptation returns. 3 months passed after that conversation. Quiet ones. Predictable ones. My son kept his distance, but not his effort. Occasional updates. Proof of work. No requests. No guilt-laced messages. Then, on a cold Thursday morning, my phone rang. It wasn't my son. It was my attorney. "I need to tell you something before you hear it from someone else," she said carefully. My chest tightened. "Your son was offered a deal." I didn't speak. "A private investor," she continued. "Off the record. Enough money to clear his remaining debts and restart his career." There it was. The old shortcut. The easy exit. The temptation dressed up as redemption. What's the catch? I asked. She paused. They want him to publicly imply that you exaggerated the incident. Nothing explicit. Just doubt. I closed my eyes. Of course they did. If he accepts, she added, it wouldn't violate the agreement directly, but it would undo everything quietly. Did he accept? I asked. No, she said. He asked for 24 hours. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I feared losing control, but because I finally understood what was at stake. If he chose the shortcut again, I wouldn't intervene. I wouldn't warn him. I wouldn't protect him from the consequences. Growth only counts when no one's forcing it. The next evening, my son called. His voice was calm. Too calm. They offered me a way out, he said. A real one. I know, I replied. A pause. You're not going to talk me out of it. No, I said. This isn't my choice. Another pause. Longer this time. They said I could have everything back, he continued. Status, money, influence. And the price? I asked. Silence, he said. Doubt. Making people question you. I waited. I thought about what you said, he continued quietly. About power. About fear. I held my breath. And then I realized something, he said. If I take that deal, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering who I have to step on next to keep it. The line went silent. I said no, he finished. I exhaled slowly. Why? I asked. Because this time, he said, I wanted to earn something I can keep. For the first time in this entire ordeal, my eyes burned. Then you chose correctly, I said. After the call ended, I sat alone in the quiet. Not relieved. Proud. Not because he had changed, but because he had chosen to. In Part 10, Final. The truth comes full circle. One last decision. One final symbol, and the legacy I choose to leave behind. Part 10. What I chose to leave behind, final. The letter arrived on a Monday morning. No return address. No drama. Just my name, written carefully. Inside was a single page, folded once. I've finished paying everything I owed. Not just the money. The damage too. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know I didn't take the shortcut. I read it twice. Then I did something I hadn't done since the night of the retirement party. I walked into my study. The safe was still there, unchanged, quiet. I opened it one last time. Inside were the documents, the plans, the safeguards, all the things that once stood between me and disappearance. At the bottom sat one envelope I had never touched. It wasn't for him. It was for me. I opened it and found a short note I'd written months ago, when I thought this would end very differently. If he never changes, lock this and walk away. I smiled. Then I removed the note and replaced it with a new one. If he changes, don't rush to forgive. Just don't punish him forever. That afternoon, I invited my son over. No lawyers. No conditions. No witnesses. He arrived unsure, standing just inside the doorway like someone waiting to be told whether they were welcome. I handed him a small box. Inside was the safe key. He stared at it, then at me. I don't need this anymore, he said. I know, I replied. That's why you're ready for it. He swallowed. What does this mean? It means the danger is over, I said. Not because you won, but because you stopped trying to. We sat together for a while, not fixing the past, not planning the future, just being present. Before he left, he asked quietly, "Do you forgive me?" I thought about it carefully. "I'm not keeping score anymore," I said. "That's the closest thing to forgiveness I have." He nodded. That was enough. After he drove away, I poured myself a glass of champagne. From a new bottle. Unopened. Untouched. I raised it, not in celebration, not in bitterness, but in clarity. I hadn't vanished. I hadn't retaliated. I had done something harder than either. I stayed alive. I stayed honest. And I refused to disappear without becoming cruel. Some legacies are built with money. Others are built with boundaries. The end.